United States President Donald Trump has announced that he has struck a massive trade deal with Japan following months of fraught negotiations. Under the agreement announced on Tuesday, the U.S. will impose a 15% tariff on Japanese exports, and Japan will invest $550 billion in the U.S., Trump said. "We just completed a massive deal with Japan, perhaps the largest deal ever made," Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform. "Japan will invest, at my direction, $550 billion into the United States, which will receive 90% of the profits. Japan will also open up the U.S. exports of cars, rice, and certain agricultural products," Trump said, adding that the deal would create hundreds of thousands of jobs. "There has never been anything like it," he wrote. Donald Trump MLK Files. Will we know how close were Trump and Epstein? What is chronic venous insufficiency? Can Trump fire Jerome Powell? Economy. Donald Trump. Trump announces massive trade deal with Japan. U.S. President said Japanese exports will be subject to a 15% tariff under the trade agreement. U.S. President Donald Trump speaks during a news conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba at the White House in Washington, D.C. on February 7, 2025. Evan Vucci. AP. By John Power. Published on the 23rd of July, 23 Juli tahun 2025. United States President Donald Trump has announced that he has struck a massive trade deal with Japan following months of fraught negotiations. Under the agreement announced on Tuesday, the U.S. will impose a 15% tariff on Japanese exports, and Japan will invest $550 billion in the U.S., Trump said. Recommended stories. List of 4 items. List 1 of 4. Trump announces new tariffs, including for Iraq, Brazil, and the Philippines. List 2 of 4 China hikes. Tariffs on U.S. goods to 125%. Hitting back at Trump list 3 of 4. What difference has BRICS made on the world stage? List 4 of 4. Trump ramps up trade war with tariff blitz, targeting 14 countries. End of list. We just completed a massive deal with Japan, perhaps the largest deal ever made, Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform. Japan will invest, at my direction, $550 billion into the United States, which will receive 90% of the profits. Japan will also open up to U.S. exports of cars, rice, and certain agricultural products, Trump said, adding that the deal would create hundreds of thousands of jobs. There has never been anything like it, he wrote. Sign up for Al Jazeera Breaking News Alert. Get real-time breaking news alerts and stay up to date with the most important headlines from around the globe. Email address. Subscribe. By signing up, you agree to our privacy policy protected by Recoptia. Speaking at a reception with members of the U.S. Congress later on Tuesday, Trump said the sides had also agreed to form a joint venture to exploit liquefied natural gas in Alaska. It's a great deal for everybody. I always say it has to be great for everybody, he said. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past. I can tell you that. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru, whose ruling coalition is reeling from the loss of its upper house majority over the weekend on Wednesday, told reporters that he would carefully examine the details of the agreement, but he believed it was in the national interest. Confirming local media reports, Ishiba said U.S. tariffs on Japanese automobiles would be lowered from 25% tariff to 15%. Auto tariffs, as well as his 50% duties on aluminum and steel, had been a major sticking point in the months-long negotiations between Washington and Tokyo, Japan, which until now has been subject to Trump's 10% baseline tariff, was facing a 25% duty on most exports. If Washington and Tokyo did not reach a deal by an August 1st deadline, reciprocal tariffs set at 15% is relatively good news for Japan. But questions remain if Japan has created any carve-outs for Section 232 tariffs in key sectors like steel and semiconductors. William Shu, Deputy Director of the Japan Chair at the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C., said in a post on LinkedIn, U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent hailed the deal as a historic agreement. I am happy to reaffirm our commitment to deepening this long-standing alliance and building the next chapter of U.S. Japan cooperation, as we enter a new golden age. Under President Trump, business said on X, Japanese auto stocks soared following Trump's announcement, with Mazda rising more than 17%. And Toyota, Nissan and Honda up by between 8.5 and 12% on Wednesday morning. Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225, which tracks the broader stock market, rose nearly 3%. While details were sparse, Trump's announcement is potentially the most significant of his trade deals to be unveiled so far, following preliminary agreements with the United Kingdom, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, and a 90-day trade truce with China. Japan, the world's fourth-largest economy, is the U.S.'s fifth-largest trading partner. The U.S. imported $148.2 billion worth of Japanese goods in 2024, while Japan bought $79.7 billion worth of U.S. products. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, it's a sign of the times that markets would cheer 15% tariffs, said Brian Jacobson, chief economist at U.S.-based Annex Wealth Management. Today, we breathe a sigh of relief. A year ago, that level of tariffs would be shocking.